Hi, yes. Well, my name is Dr. Jorge Partida. I have the title of Chief of Psychology and Chief of our Anti-Racism, Diversity, and Inclusion, or ARDI Division, at the Department of Mental Health for LA County. Well, when I was in high school, I knew that I wanted to be a healer. I knew that I didn't want to be a traditional doctor. I wanted to be a healer, and I wanted to be a healer because I had a grandmother from Mexico. I was born in Mexico. That was a curandera, and she was a master with plants and healing people. And so since I was her oldest grandson, I wanted to be just like her. And so when we came to the States, I was 9 years old, and as I started to go to school and I started to think about what I wanted to do when I grew up, I wanted to be just like her. And the closest career that I could think of that was like that was of psychology, a doctor of the mind. And so from that point on, I just started to study psychology and started to take as many courses as I could on psychology, and was really fascinated by why people do what they do and what do people's feelings and past have to do with their ability to create the life they want to live. So became a psychologist. So my first job out of college, my first official educated job that required a degree, was as an alternative high school teacher. I was working at a nonprofit organization in Pilsen, little village in Chicago, which is heavily Mexican-American neighborhood. And there was an alternative high school that was teaching students that had been failed, as we said, by the public school system. And so I was fresh out of college, not much older than the kids I was teaching, but we taught them a methodology of empowerment. And so they were able to take courses that they were not able to complete in high school and do exceptionally well. So I'm proud to say that a lot of our students made it to college. So that got me really interested in doing that kind of work. From there, I went to work for other nonprofits doing family treatment and family preservation work, Children's Home and Aid Society. As I was taking my doctorate courses, I knew that I wanted to be a psychologist, and a bachelor's in psychology was not enough. So I enrolled in my doctorate program and kept, since I'm poor, from a poor family, I had to work and go to school. So I continue to work in an area that would enrich my understanding from the books. So I did a lot of like family preservation work, and I did a lot of substance abuse treatment work. And so by the time I graduated with my doctorate, I was able to be offered a job at a Catholic hospital, St. Elizabeth's in Chicago, where I had done one of my practicums. And so the vice president, who I'm still good friends with, gave me a blank sheet of paper when I graduated, and she said, write your job description. And so I became the hospital's first director of behavioral health. So we started a clinic, a family clinic, a youth clinic. We had 6 inpatient units, including a substance abuse treatment unit. From there, I decided I didn't want to stay in the cold of Chicago for the rest of my life. And if I was going to make a move, it would have to be then. I'd met Cesar Chavez on a trip that he did to the alternative high school. And so that always stayed in my mind. And I'm like, you know what? I want to be where that man is. And so that brought me to California. And so there, I became a director of a doctorate program at John F. Kennedy University. It was the first doctorate program with a full focus on multicultural and diversity issues. And then from there, I went to work for the Department of Public Health in San Francisco as the director of behavioral health. From there, I got disappointed with government work and bureaucracies. And so I went to Africa and worked with President Sirleaf's cabinet. She was the first female president of Africa in Liberia. And so I worked in her department, helping to renovate the public health system and working with boy soldiers, repatriation and reentry of boy soldiers. And then from there, came back to the States and decided to get back into public health work. So now I'm working for the Department of Mental Health in LA County. And that's been my journey. Just a lot of different environments. I've had the privilege of working in countries like Colombia, Peru, obviously Mexico, and here in the States, and obviously in Liberia and Africa. So it's just been a wonderful opportunity to imagine how we could create community if we had more intention, if we had more love and compassion for each other, how we could heal from the traumas that many of us have been impacted by. And that's what's keeping me doing this work. I'd like to say that I'm honoring my grandmother. I hope that she's proud. When I told her what I was going to be doing for a career, she didn't seem real pleased. She was still alive then. And she was afraid that education sometimes can be a tool of oppression instead of liberation. Sometimes we take our education and we forget our culture, or we forget our background. And so in my work, I've been very clear to not only have the educational experience of a doctorate in clinical psychology, but then to also honor the ancestral wisdom and the teachings of those that came before us to lay the groundwork. So I hope wherever she's at, that she's looking down and feeling that she has been a huge influence in my life. So the good news of being a doctor in psychology, a psychologist, is that it gives you a lot of freedom. The bad news is there's not a whole lot of in between. If you want to be a psychologist, you have to get a doctorate, and that is 5 years, usually about 5 years full-time, post a bachelor's degree, plus licensure. You have to pass a licensing exam in every state that would allow you to practice legally in that state. And then obviously that license has to be renewed every 2 years, so you have to keep up your education and training. There are obviously careers as a mental health technician or substance abuse counselor along the way that require a bachelor's degree. You can get those jobs as a bachelor's degree trained individual. And then obviously there's also a master's in social work, MSW, or marriage and family therapist that requires a master's level. So that typically is about 2.5 to 3 years, depending on the program, post a bachelor's degree, also requiring licensure to practice. So that's kind of the good news, bad news story is you have to kind of to be a psychologist, have to really decide this is what you want to do and commit the time and effort. But I'll tell you, it's really, in my opinion, well worth it. People come into this work not necessarily because of the pay, but certainly because of the mission. Unfortunately, there's plenty of work. We are dealing with a lot of mental health stressors that are post-COVID. I like to say it's the mental health pandemic. So we see the impact in families and children, and unfortunately, most disproportionately in communities of color, Latino and African American primarily. So if you're interested in really making a difference and making a change in a time where there's great need, this would be your calling. I love this question about my typical day and my typical work structure. That's the good news about this, about being a psychologist, is no day is typical. There are days where I will start in the morning with a TV interview. Sometimes I go to a studio and record a morning show in Spanish. Mañana Latina, not to plug it, but and then from there I will go into the office and I will sit in some meetings with other managers, typically psychologists and other psychiatrists, social workers, and we'll talk about whatever plan we're implementing for the county, whether it's a program or an initiative, working with the homeless community, or working with the elderly communities, working with the underserved cultural communities, of which we have 7 in the department, and looking to expand language access. We have 13 anchor languages in LA County. So making sure that we have clinicians, we have interpreters, making sure that our Access for All community, which is folks with learning disability or hearing impairment, speech impediment, physical impairment, also have access to care. So it's just the day is very broad and varied. I also have a very small private practice, so I do see some patients individually, and that can range from I have young adults to mature adults to couples. I do some couples work. So every day is different. Every day is a little bit of everything, and I love the diversity. I used to also, when I was working at the university, I used to also teach a couple of courses in addition to being the director of the doctorate program. So academia is another great possibility for somebody that doesn't necessarily want to be providing clinical care directly. So what can you expect when you first start off? You can expect to have read a lot, to have a lot of information in your head, and to have student debt. Hopefully you will have gotten some help along the way and some scholarships. And then you can expect to still feel like you don't know much, even though you've gotten through practicums, and you've gotten through the book learning and you've passed your examination. And that's very normal. I think that once you start to actually engage, whether it's direct clinical work, whether it's research, or you start to engage in the work that you're doing, you're going to find that all of that information that you've learned comes to you, and it comes to you in a very synthesized and very organic manner. And that's where I think the beauty of every psychologist comes through, is because it's like an artist. You have the brushes and you have the paints, you have all the tools that you picked up along the way. Now it's time to create. Now it's time for you to put your individual stamp on your work, so you start to really, develop your own clinical sense. You start to develop your strengths. Maybe you start to develop your own expertise. I've worked a great deal with addiction. I've worked a great deal with childhood trauma, repatriation, and so I can say that these are areas where I'm very much considered a subject matter expert and can talk about that. So I'll get like TV interviews, or I'll get I'll get a college to call me and maybe do a keynote. So you start to like really develop yourself as you do your work, and people get to know what you do. They start to seek you out for your expertise, and that's how you develop your practice. So we have psychologists that are in private practice. We have psychologists that work with organizations. They work in hospitals, schools, universities. So the sky's the limit, and it just really does depend on finding your niche. The best part of my job is reimagining mental health as health, recognizing, and I think we're in an important crossroads in our society where we are recognizing the power of the mind and the power of our early childhood development and any childhood traumas that we've had, that there is possibility for healing. Not only is there possibility for healing, but it's a necessity. It's a necessity for us to really be fully realized. And so I think that there is the possibility of mental health in a time where there is so much need, and our communities are being bombarded to a level never seen before, with mass shootings, racism, disproportionate access to care, so many issues that are really timely and critical. So that's the best part, is I feel like the work is very relevant. The worst part of my job is the bureaucracies. I have been in public health now, in LA 5 years, in San Francisco another 5. And our systems are grossly in need of a major rehaul, because there's a disconnect between our systems and their ability to provide care and the needs of our community. And our systems are more complicated and dysfunctional than they have a right to be. So dealing with that reality, dealing with the need for overhaul and the work that it requires can be a little daunting. Well, you have job security. I'm gonna tell you that the projection for a job demand in this field is huge. It is going to be highly needed. We have apps now that do wellness work, and you can get a bot to respond to mental health questions, but there will never ever be a substitute for a real person who is skilled at providing clinical quality care. So there will always be job security. The prospects are amazing. Even if you get yourself in student debt, you can make a pretty good salary once you have your doctorate, and you can pay those bills off. But not only that, there are a lot of departments in the county, like our department, that gives incentives for people to come and study, including tuition reimbursement and sign-on incentives. So definitely there is a demand. And if you represent a diverse community, if you speak a different language, if you have an interest working with disability or underserved communities, even more in demand. Oh, I like this question. So what do we look for when we hire somebody? I'll tell you one thing that's really important. There are a lot of smart people out there, and there are a lot of book smart people out there. But give me a critical thinker any day. Anybody that can take information and make it their own, and can give their unique perspective on something, that person is going to be highly valued. So by all means, learn as much as you can and memorize as much as you can. But really, what do you do personally with the information that you're given? How do you make that your own? That's really critical. Anybody that is interested and is a visionary, somebody that believes in leadership, believes in community, believes in being and considering themselves a change agent, somebody that knows that our communities need healing and wants to be a part of that solution, that's going to come across in an interview, how committed you are and why it is that you want to do this work. And then we look for that person. That person definitely has a place in the department. And again, the Department of Mental Health specifically, now speaking of the department and not just of the discipline of psychology, but the Department of Mental Health is going to be looking for people with lived experience. So not necessarily a degree or whatever degree you do have, but you do have experience working in a community and you're interested in community development or grassroots development. That's really critical. So we really try to be as representative of the communities that we serve as possible. And we know that our communities have doctors, they have social workers, they have people with peer lived experience, and all of us are needed as a multidisciplinary team to make a difference. So there's always a place at the Department of Mental Health. Wow, my ninth grade self. Let me think of where I was in ninth grade. Um, wow. You know, I would tell myself that because by ninth grade I already had an idea of what I wanted to do. And was very focused. I would tell my ninth grade self to slow down, to not try to do everything at once, and to enjoy every day of life because it goes by quick. I would tell my ninth grade self to study, but don't let studying be all of your life. Have balance and enjoy being young and enjoy being free. Enjoy the time that you have, and then everything, including what you enjoy, will give your life greater meaning and will give your purpose, whatever it is that you want to study, greater meaning. So, you know, I would tell my ninth grade self, don't be so serious and have fun. It's also part of the work. Any other tips or resources? I would say be at least one step ahead of your planning process. So what I mean by that is, if you are a high school student and you're looking to a college, really take that work seriously of thinking of where you want to be. If you're a college student and you want to be a grad student, really picture yourself in that environment and think of where you want to be. If you are a graduate student and you want to be a doctorate student, or you want to get your license because you already have graduated with your doctorate, be one step ahead of where you want to be. Vision is a really, really powerful manifester. If you have a sense of what you want to be and you can see it in your head, it allows your brain the resources to put whatever structures together to make it happen. So clarity of vision, I would say, really critical. And then always reach out to people that might be of support in your career. So a college counselor, anybody that you admire as a mentor, covet mentorship relationships. They're really important. And really, if you have somebody that you see as a mentor, let them know by all means that you admire them, and let them know why. Really build that relationship of trust and collaboration, because you need people to have your back and you need people to support you along the way. Those relationships will help open doors for you as well.
My name is Edgar Luna, and I am a PUC alumni from CCMS and TCHS, so go Jaguars, go Dolphins. What did I want to be in high school? To answer the question honestly, I didn't have an actual idea of what I wanted to be in high school. I chose the career path I chose towards the end of my senior year, when I started taking an AP psychology course. I fell in love with the field, and that's kind of how I started my career. But even then, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with psychology, or if it would really take me anywhere of where I wanted it to be. It took me all of my college career and then entering the workforce with the degree to really figure out where it is where I want to go. So that's how I would say I would answer that question to my full honesty. I honestly just didn't know what I wanted to be, and I felt like it was a bit of pressure at first. As time went on, though, I realized that was okay. I didn't need to know what I wanted to be. It would eventually come to me, and it did. So my career journey, I work in psychology. Specifically right now I work at a psychiatric facility, but the way I got there was a little unorthodox for myself. I first started as an ABA therapist, ABA standing for Applied Behavioral Analysis, and it's mostly working with kids with some sort of mental disorder, whether it be autism, maybe they have ADHD, a variety of things depending on the child. I would work to help rehabilitate, in a sense, their maladaptive behaviors, whether it be, spitting behaviors, maybe hitting, bad manners at the table, whatever mom and dad felt was inappropriate. My job was to go in, teach them step by step. At times I would teach parents how to parent, and that was a little funky for me because, I'm not a parent, but I would go in and I'd give them advice. I'd tell them how they should tackle certain scenarios with their kid. And I did that for about a year. But 6 months into that job, I wasn't feeling it as much. I wanted to jump to another different field, still psychology related. So I looked around and I found a counselor position at a psychiatric facility. Now, starting as a psychiatric counselor, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I came thinking I was gonna, maybe give a little bit of like psychotherapy the way I had with the children. Jumping in was a very different thing. Working with psychiatric patients was not at all what I was expecting, but at the same time, it's exactly what I was expecting. Environment, working conditions, the patients themselves, it was a bit of a shock. Regardless, I feel like I really adapted. As time went on, I was a counselor for about 2 months, and 2 months in, not my supervisor, but my, I guess, head boss, the program director, came up to me and offered me a case manager position. She said she had enjoyed the way I dealt with patients. She said that I had a good way to speak to them and I handled myself appropriately. I never had to deal with combative patients. I always de-escalated them really quickly. And it's one of the hardest things to do in this kind of job, de-escalation. But I excelled in it. I succeeded in it. I was given an opportunity because normally case manager positions in this field require a master's degree, a degree I don't have. I only have my BA. Regardless, I was given the opportunity. I took it, and thus far I've done well. I've been a case manager for about a little bit over a year now. I deal with a lot of clinical issues, a lot of rehab issues, different things that come my way. I'm the youngest person in my office. I think the closest person to me is maybe 6 years apart in age. But even then, I can feel the difference in how they uphold themselves and how I came in. So it's been a bit of a challenge for me adjusting into this very professional world. Coming in as a fresh college graduate, I still very much feel like a kid at times. Regardless, I'm doing well career-wise. I've gotten to where I am. A big part of it has been luck. A big part of it has been my skill. It's a mixture of things. But that's how I'd say my career path has gone so far. So my complete job title is a clinical rehabilitation case manager. There's a slash in between clinical and rehabilitation because depending on who is speaking to me, my title changes just a little bit. So whether, let's say, it was a state entity, because the government still has some say in how hospitals and stuff function, I would be the clinical case manager because I handle the clinical issues with the patient. But then let's say it were the Department of Mental Health, which is a little bit different from the state, though it's still government ran. To them, I would be the rehab case manager because I handle the special treatment program at our facility. Thus, my title would be the rehab case manager for them. So my title can change depending on who I'm speaking to, as I said, but my responsibilities are all the same. And my responsibilities are one too many, honestly, as I feel is with many healthcare workers. We do a lot and there isn't too much of the appreciation or value outside of it. But my duties stem from taking care of patient needs, wants, to laying out their entire treatment course plan. So that could be from me identifying their needs, whether it be they have a need to do their activities of daily living, such as showering, brushing their teeth, changing their clothing, a need of maybe they are assaultive, aggressive, I would put that in as a need. So I track data on who they are. And a lot of the data is really subjective, so I have to make that subjective data more objective by identifying the issue and generalizing it to the sense of what psychology would be, because patients may all have the same diagnosis, but their symptoms are going to be expressed a little bit differently. regardless, they have that same diagnosis. So it's up to me to generalize that to make it easier to understand for the rest of the treatment team. And then I also guide counselors on the floor with how they should run interventions, how to run groups, a lot of staff development. I'm on top of them when it comes to their documentation. I do a lot of documentation. I have to make sure my staff is on top of their documentation, so my documentation can get done. So it's a lot of tracking, a lot of observing, a lot of guiding others, a lot of clinical observation. And usually the requirements for everything I do would be a master's, whether it be a master's of science or master's of art in psychology. As I stated earlier, though, in the previous question, I only hold a bachelor's of arts, my BA in psychology. And, BA, BS, I don't really think it makes too much of a difference in psych, whether you want to go further. I feel it does. I got my BA at UC Riverside. I should have gone for the BS now that I know what career path I want to take, but that was a lack of knowledge on my part coming into college. Now I know the difference. Bachelor of Science is more science-based, obviously, and then Bachelor of Arts was a little more based in the humanities. Regardless, it got me to where I am. Like I said, I was given the opportunity. I should have a master's to hold the position I do. I don't, but I'm getting the clinical experience regardless. So experience-wise, I'm just as much there as someone that would hold a master's degree. And I'm very appreciative of having been given this opportunity because, again, it kind of guided me to where I would like to go for my career in the future. That's really it when it comes to, requirements and what I really do. Obviously, I do a lot more, but it would be much too long to state everything that I really do at that job. It's healthcare. There's always a lot to do. So typical work hours for me look like 8 to 4:30. So I get to work at 8 a.m. I take my break at 12:30 to 1, 30-minute break, and then I'm working again all the way till 4:30. So I get my full hours in. I know as a counselor, I worked 8 to 4, so I would get 7.5 hours there. So it really isn't too much of a difference. I'm honestly just there 30 minutes extra to close up the day when it comes to our special treatment program and our department of rehab. I'm there just to make sure that the final things for the day are done, that we're leaving the patients calm, and that everything is going to be okay for the night. Now, work environment, I have a very unique work environment, I'd like to say, because of the facility I work at. So I work at I don't know if I can actually say the facility, but it's Silmar Health and Rehab here in San Fernando Valley. If you were to look into it, you would see that we are the biggest institute of mental disease in the state. We house 208 patients, and all of them have some form of psychosis. The majority of them are diagnosed with schizophrenia or some form of schizoaffective disorder. So because of that, all of these people come with substance abuse issues, chemical dependency, homelessness, and lack of insight because of everything they've done to themselves throughout their lives. So, and to add on top of that, a good amount of them combative, assaultive, aggressive. So the work environment for me can be very hostile, or it can be very calm depending on how the patients are that day. It can vary from day to day. It can vary from hour to hour. It can vary from minute to minute, honestly. It's very unique. This work environment definitely isn't for everyone. Coming into it, you have to have a very specific personality. You have to have a lot of patience and empathy, sympathy, but at the same time, be able to set boundaries, be stern. It's a very intense place. Regardless, I love it. I love what I do. This is definitely the population I will continue to work with. And going off of that, if I want to continue to work with them, I could stay as I am and continue to be a case manager. I'm in a supervisory role, a clinical role. I know people make their careers off of this, and I could continue to stay there. However, I could also continue to move on, continue in education. Normally, if the case managers would have a master's, and from there they would be able to move up to, let's say, program director, which is, I know, the route my current program director took. She was a counselor, she was a case manager, and now she's leading the entire program. So I could definitely do that. But for me personally, I fell in love with psychiatry, psychiatric patients, the psychiatric facility. So I'm choosing to go into psychiatry So I personally would have to go to med school for that. So the goal for me right now is get into med school. It's a lot because I wasn't something that I necessarily wanted to do. I always knew I wanted to do healthcare, but to actually go to med school was a really big commitment. I'm actually starting that school next week, February 6th. So that'll be really interesting for me. So that's the route I'm taking. Again, I could continue to stay here, but I want more. I want to be more involved, and I want to continue to learn. So I think when someone enters in the general field of psychology, I think they should expect hardship. And I say that with sincerity because though psychology is a big thing, and I think nowadays there's a lot more awareness for mental health, psychology itself is a field that is growing every single day, every single year. Things are changing, we're learning more, we're understanding more about ourselves. And again, I feel that nowadays there's that big growth and that push for mental health. But it's right now, that's all it is, it's the push. We aren't necessarily there with the full advocacy. We aren't necessarily there with completely treating mental illness and getting to the core of it all. So I would say hardship, because coming into psychology, you're gonna see a lot of people come in with this sense like, yes, I'm gonna help, and yes, I'm gonna do this, and the system very quickly crushes them, as I have seen. Because I came in with that same sense of, yes, I'm gonna make a change, and I continue to have that sense of, yes, I'm going to make a change, but I see the hardships that there are, and I see the difficulty that comes with having to pursue that kind of ambition. You know, psychology most of the often is going to be healthcare related. And again, it's a growing field, and it's so because it's growing, it's not a field that's given too much attention. There isn't the funding that is there. There isn't the need, the awareness, the full awareness. There isn't the full education. So I would say someone coming into it has to be prepared to face a challenge and to be ready to grow and to be ready to advocate not only for themselves, to advocate for those they choose to work with, whether it be psychiatric patients, children, the homeless, teenagers, adults, the elderly, families, couples, whoever it may be. They need to be ready to face hardship. The best part and the worst part. I'm going to answer both questions with the same answer and say it is patience. Because again, very unique place where I work, the patients can be combative with me one moment, the next they're friendly as if nothing ever happened. And again, some people may not like that. They may be triggered, they may be ticked off, but I enjoy it because I know it's because of their mental illness that they are the way they are. Regardless, I know what I'm signing up for. I'm going in there. Sure, it's annoying because some of these patients can be clingy, they can be intrusive, demanding, verbally abusive, belligerent, but they can also be really funny, supportive, and protective of you if you take the time to really build a rapport with them, listen to them, help them out, and do what it is you're there to do, which is to provide healthcare and to help them be better than the way they are. So that's how I would answer that question. The patients are both the best and the worst part of my job. So again, I work at a psychiatric facility working with psychotic patients. I definitely think this is, it's a bit of a hard question to answer truthfully, because there are just so many factors that can come into it. I see so many people on the streets that do have a mental illness, and obviously they should be put in facilities like mine where we can help them get through, through their drug withdrawals, help them cope with their agitation, help them cope with whatever mental illness they may have. But then comes the issue of, again, it is a healthcare job, and healthcare doesn't get the people need this, people need that, but the reality is the money isn't always there for one reason or the other. So the growth outlook, as if I were to look at it from purely a mental health perspective, I'd say it's very positive. From the research I've done, I think there's between a 10 to 20% increase between 2020 to 2030, because again, we have such a big push for mental health. But I can look at it from the other side and say the outlook may not be that positive just because it is a healthcare position, it is a healthcare field, and it's one that's not given as much attention as every other field. So though there may be that demand and the need, the actual results may not be that. So when we're hiring for this position, I think the main things we're looking for is someone who has a strong personality, whether it be being able to set the boundaries or being able to take, verbal abuse from other people, because again, it's a strong place. So we're looking for someone with a strong personality. We're looking with someone with patience, someone with sympathy, someone with empathy. And a lot of the time, these are traits that one person may not have. Regardless, those are traits that we're going to look for. And even if one or two is missing, we're going to look for you being able to learn those traits, you being able to adapt and learn on the job. So that's what this job really is. We are learning for, it's coming to me now, we're looking for someone with adaptability, someone who can adapt to where it is they are, because situations will change from one moment to the other. One moment you're going to be calm with the patient, talking about your day, they're going to be going on some delusional rant, and the next moment they're going to be looking at you because they think you stole their money, even though you were standing right in front of them the entire time. So the big thing we're looking for is adaptability, strong personality, patience, sympathy. Yes, that's what I'm going to say we're looking for. Because again, there's a lot of factors that come to play into it, but I'm going to say those are the ones that I've seen in our recent hires. Because again, right now we've been recently hiring, and these are the things I've seen in those that we've gotten. So that's how I'm gonna say that. If I could go back and speak to my 9th grade self, I would tell myself, be more confident. And I'd leave it at that. I don't think I would need to give myself any specific general or a specific career advice. I think I would have figured it out one way or the other as I did. But I would go back and tell myself to be more confident, because it's the confidence that has held me back from other opportunities. It's the confidence that has held me back in growing in my current position. Because every day I'm learning on the job, every day I'm learning how I can do it better, whether it be how I'm delivering patient care or how I'm interacting with the staff that I supervise. So I would tell myself to be more confident, because it's that confidence that I need to sell to not only the staff, but to the patients, because they need to see that I'm confident enough to tell them how it is they're going to be discharged and why it is they'll be discharged. And I need to also be able to go to my staff and say, this is how we're going to get them out, and this is what you need to do. But I need to show that confidence. And at times I will say I have lacked that confidence. When I first started the position, I was nervous. Specific resources or tips that I can really share. It's one that you just have to get into through luck, or someone and you find your way in. But in a general sense, to get started in any career, the first advice or resource I would share is LinkedIn, the application. It is a social media type of platform, but it's a professional platform. And it's how I got my current job. I was randomly scrolling through one day. I saw an ad for a counselor position. I applied. I got the job, and I am where I am today as a case manager. So, LinkedIn was a great resource for me. And even then, I have people who add me on the thing and they ask me questions. And at first, I thought it was a little bit funny. I was like, this is a professional social media. As I got into my field, as I delved more into the actual professional aspect of it, I was like, wow, this is actually a great thing. I can contact people can contact me. There's, let's say, a future PUC alumni that wanted to get into this type of position, but they didn't have the connection. I obviously am a PUC alumni. They can reach out. Hey, I'm a PUC alumni. I want to learn more about this, and I'd be more than happy to help them there. I've had alumni from my university, UC Riverside, reach out to me through LinkedIn. I've done other career panels like this at UR for them. And again, that was through LinkedIn. So opportunities can come. You can find them. I've used LinkedIn. I think it's great. I wish I was being sponsored by them right now, but it's great. I love it. I would definitely use it. And another resource that I will plug in really quickly, from what I know, this resource is based in Sun Valley, out here in the San Fernando Valley. They are El Proyecto del Barrio. They're a youth program that can have a lot of people, youths are from anywhere between middle school to high school, build a resume, apply for jobs, find financial aid. if you stick with the program, let's say you go to college, you come back, they can help you find certificates in being a pharmacist, a pharmacy technician. They'll, they give you certificates for gas. Let's say you're a driver, but you don't make too much money. They'll give you a little credit card and they'll supply you with gas for the week. And I didn't use this resource as much as I wish as I could have, but I did use them in my time here in high school and middle school when I was out here in the Valley. They were great for me. They helped me get into the labor force when I was young. They helped me, really get a sense of what it was to have a job. They helped me, make my first resume. They were a great resource. I don't think they're too widely known. Regardless, I found out about them. I don't remember how, but I did. I used them. It was great. And I wish I could have used them more. I don't really have any contact with the people there anymore. But anyone who wants to reach out, I'd be more than happy to try to provide that information, or I can find information, or, do research as, one should. But that's the resource that I'm going to plug because they have so much to offer and so much that I wish I could have used. I didn't, but I would always push anyone else to go to them and use them to their full ability because they had so many programs. I almost became the pharmacy tech through their thing, but obviously I chose a different career path, but it was a great opportunity. It was free. They pay for the schooling. They pay for the gas. So that's the resource I'm gonna plug.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I would say that in high school, I definitely knew that I wanted to pursue a career in psychology. I knew that I was destined to be a therapist somehow. I think it was within my friend group, I was the one who they often talked to about their problems. A lot of my friends would always say I was a really good listener. And so I just imagined myself, being a therapist in private practice with my, clients sitting on a sofa, telling me what's going on in their lives. But it because of my experiences with my friends and having these conversations and getting that validation from my friends about my listening skills, their comfort level and just talking with me. I just knew that was a career path that I wanted to pursue. Sure. So as I mentioned in high school, I knew I wanted to pursue psychology. So I applied to different universities and I decided to go to LMU, Loyola Marymount University, where I majored in psychology. There, it was absolutely confirmed for me that psychology is definitely where I was meant to be. I really enjoyed all my psychology classes, doing clinical research my senior year. And interestingly enough, also in my senior year, as I was walking around the campus at LMU, I stumbled across a flyer that posted a workshop, a free workshop that was happening that weekend about art therapy. And art therapy was something very unfamiliar to me. I had no idea what it was, but I was extremely curious. And so I decided to attend that workshop. And again, I'm a senior at LMU at the time. And at that workshop, I discovered art therapy, which was combining art into the therapeutic process where clients create art and the therapist processes what's going on in their life and their feelings through the art creations that they made. And I've always had an interest in art. I've always considered myself a creative person, but I never really thought that the two fields could be combined. And so after having attended that workshop, I did more research, found out what was required to enter into this program, this graduate program. And I realized that it took a year of college level art classes. So it's not enough just to be creative or to do art on your own. You had to have formal art credits. So after I graduated with my bachelor's in psychology, I went to Glendale Community College and I spent an entire year taking only art classes. And I have to say that was the most incredible year, taking painting 101, ceramics 101, life drawing 101, just all these different art classes. And so after I had completed that, or during that year that I was taking these college classes, I applied to the graduate program at Loyola Marymount for their Maritime Family Therapy program specializing in art therapy. And I got in, and I absolutely loved every single class that I had in my graduate program, learning about the field of psychology, learning how to be a therapist, but at the same time, learning how to integrate art into my practice. It was amazing. And so I did internships while I was in graduate school. I did one internship at the Foothill Family Service. I did another internship at the Watts Clinical Counseling Center. And both experiences taught me so much of how to be a therapist, how to conduct individual psychotherapy, how to conduct family therapy, that by the time I graduated, I felt really prepared to enter into the field. And my first job out of graduate school was working at GLASS. It stands for Gay and Lesbian Adolescent Social Services. Unfortunately, they're no longer in business. But I got to work with gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual questioning youth. And it was so amazing. And all of these youth have been they were either in foster care or they were on probation. So they're all wards of the court. And they were living in group homes. And I got to do individual psychotherapy and group psychotherapy with them. I stayed at that agency for a number of years. I started off as a group home therapist, eventually moved into being a day program therapist, to director of the day program, to eventually director of training at that agency. And then eventually I did some other work. I worked at Penny Lane in their group home agency. And then eventually I came to PUC. And it was an interesting journey coming to PUC. I knew Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Elliott, who were both co-founders of PUC Schools. And I approached them back in 2000 after CCMS was the first charter school that was opened. And I proposed to them this idea that I could come and create a training program where I can train new therapists who are also in graduate school, and at the same time provide the much needed mental health services to the students at their school. They absolutely loved the idea, so I was brought on. And then in 2003, I fully developed our program and brought in our first cohort of interns, and have been continuing to work with interns who in turn provide mental health services to the students and families at PUC schools since. And so we started off with just myself as a clinical supervisor and my 16 interns till today. 20 plus years later, we are a team of 7 clinicians, 6 clinical supervisors that are composed of licensed clinical social workers, licensed clinical marriage and family therapists, and licensed psychologists. And so we're 7 clinicians strong. We have 8 marital and family therapy associates who work at our schools, and I have well over 90 clinical marital and family therapy trainees working to provide mental health supports to students and families at not only actually PUC schools, but our contract sister schools as well. And then during my journey here at PUC, I actually really wanted to pursue my doctorate. And I decided to get my doctorate at USC because they offered a doctorate in education that had a specialization in educational psychology. So I felt that that was a perfect blend of what I was doing, working in the education system, as well as looking at psychology. And so I got my doctorate from there, and have just been enjoying the work at PUC ever since. Absolutely. So if you graduate with just a bachelor's in psychology, it is a little bit more limiting in terms of the jobs that you can take on. You would not be able to get a job as a clinical therapist just with a bachelor's in psychology. With a bachelor's in psychology, you could potentially get jobs as childcare workers, case managers, entry-level positions in different foster family agencies, outpatient clinic agencies, but not to practice as a therapist. So if one was interested in pursuing psychology and pursuing being a therapist, one would have to get a bachelor's in psychology or a related field and then go into a graduate programs. There are actually different graduate programs that one can pursue to be a therapist. You just have different specializations. I myself took the path of a master's in marital and family therapy, MFT. One could also pursue a master's in LPCC, which is licensed professional clinical counselors. That is a very similar graduate program. The difference is that they focus a little bit more on career counseling in addition to therapy. And lastly, one can get a master's in social work. And you get a clinical background there. You can practice as a therapist. The difference in the education is that they do specialize more in case management in addition to therapy. So if you want just a true therapy experience, I would say a master's in marital and family therapy. If you're really interested in kind of blending work with career development, then LPCC. And if you're really interested in doing more kind of case management, being more of a caseworker and therapist, I would say pursue a master's in social work. So you have different paths to become a therapist. My daily work. So my daily work consists of consulting with my clinical supervisors who are directly overseeing the work of the counselors who are at the school sites. So I help to consult on any difficult cases. So when we have students who are dealing with suicidality, who are self-harming, who have been victims of child abuse, when there are acts of school violence on the school sites, when there are threats made to the schools, I consult on those situations and help provide some guidance, help provide some resources. I developed the trainings for the clinical counselors. So as I mentioned, I went through a program that specialized in art therapy. So I wove in art therapy into this training program that I developed here at PUC school. So our interns get to learn about art therapy, get to learn about the practice of art therapy, and are given the tools to actually implement art therapy with their clients. So we provide art supplies in all of the offices. But I also conduct trainings on music therapy. And so I teach my counselors how to use music therapy in two different ways, active sessions as well as receptive sessions. I've also learned about sand tray therapy. So I actually conduct trainings on doing sand tray therapy, and there's an actual sand tray and a tray of miniature toys in all of our offices. And I conduct trainings on cinema therapy, and I teach my interns how to use clips from commercials, TikToks, YouTube, movies, televisions, to use in session to help kids process their feelings. So that and many, many more, but I do specialize in providing therapy trainings on creative therapies. What you can expect just kind of entering the field of psychology after getting a bachelor's degree, and just looking at what you can expect even from a bachelor's in psychology, you'd be taking a lot of psychology classes, looking at development, how the brain works, how to think about thinking. You would be learning how to do clinical research, working with actual test subjects. And then once you graduate, I think what you can expect is to find jobs working with people. But again, it's not a work of a therapist, but it's more, like I said, kind of case management, connecting people with resources, taking care of people, if you will, like in a group home, kind of overseeing their health and welfare, or if you were working at a nursing home providing case management, a foster family agency providing case management. So a lot of connecting people with outside resources, outside agencies that could provide help in certain area, assessing needs. So that's the kind of work I think you could expect from graduating with a bachelor's. With a master's, what you can expect is to find jobs providing psychotherapy. So different places that you could provide psychotherapy is also group homes, but obviously it'd be different than kind of being a childcare worker. You're actually providing psychotherapy to the clients and to the families. You could work at schools being a therapist in a school. You could, there's a lot of what we call outpatient clinics. So they're clinics that provide mental health supports. And so you can kind of work there where people come to receive counseling. You could work in detention halls. You can work in juvenile camps. You can work in hospitals, again, all providing psychotherapy. You can work in the courts, helping to provide assessments for court mediators. For my job, I would say the best part of my job is just graduating these wonderful clinicians who I got to see at the very beginning, who were very nervous and scared, to confident, competent therapists. To see that growth that they made from a year of working with us and working with students and families, that is absolutely the best. Seeing them kind of move off into the career, to be, to work with others out there, and then to get those phone calls later to let me know that they've gotten a job, that they've become licensed, that they're supervising. That I absolutely love. And I'd say the worst part of my job is when we have to make child abuse reports and when we have to hospitalize students. It's never easy. There's so much that is involved, and it's just not something that I enjoy doing, but I know that I have to do. Just in the field, I think the best part of this type of work is the growth and the insight that your clients develop, to see clients heal wounds from trauma, to see clients and families just be appreciative of this opportunity to learn how to communicate better. And again, I think the same that I said for my job, I think the most difficult and challenging part of the work of being a therapist is doing child abuse reports and having to make that call to a PMRT to come out to do a psychiatric medical response assessment on a student who's potentially a harm to themselves or others. Wow. Well, I would say, gosh, since the pandemic, I think it's finally really come to everyone's attention how important mental health is, and how it's desperately needed everywhere. And so what I have seen is just an explosion really of jobs out there for clinicians. And I believe that that's going to continue to be steady for years to come, that there will be more jobs in more types of agencies, schools, companies, because people are having a hard time coping with life, coping with the status of what's going on in the world, fear of, being kind of put back on lockdown of another serious virus coming, etc. That I think that there's always going to be an extremely high need for clinicians in the mental health field.
Thank you.
In terms of experience, we understand that students who are interviewing with me for my internship, for my traineeships, don't have any experience. They're coming to me because I'm offering them the chance to gain experience. But what I do look for is someone who does have an eagerness to learn, because we want you to be excited about doing this work. We know that people are going to be nervous and scared, but just that there's underneath that fear or anxiety, that there's this excitement, this yearning learn more about being a therapist, and the willingness to, work with others, the willingness to be under supervision, to follow the guidance of their supervisor, to be open, to be honest, to be vulnerable, to be creative, definitely to be flexible, patient, empathetic. These were all characteristics I would say that we're kind of looking for when we interview. Gosh, I would say you are definitely headed into the career that you were meant to be in. And wow, just to stay creative. To stay creative, because one thing I've learned, and the reason we've incorporated so many creative modalities into our specific training is because, when you're in therapy and you're working with clients, it's not always easy just to ask someone a question and expect them just to answer you. It's always nicer and easier when you can bring in creativity and be able to process through a drawing, through listening to someone's favorite song, to watch a clip of someone's favorite movie, or to play in the sand. It's such a nicer way to engage in the therapeutic process for both the clinician and for the client. So I just kind of tell myself, my 9th grade self, is to, enter into this field. It was meant for you, and just to stay creative throughout high school, throughout undergraduate, and for the rest of your life. Sure. Tips. A tip I would give is realize that everyone is scared to start off. Everyone. You're not the only one. And all those people who you think are really confident in as they start the process, they're just as nervous. They are just as nervous. So just to kind of embrace the process. Another big tip, self-care. To always be doing things to take care of your own mental health, because if you are in just a negative state of mind, just not feeling healthy, not feeling good, clients will pick up on that, and it's just, you need to take care of yourself first. So self-care. And then resources, networking, talking to others, finding people who are in this career. I know that my information, my email, our website will all be shared in this presentation. You can reach out to me, but just reach out to people in the field, find out what they're doing, how they got there. There are so many different websites that you can look at. If you were interested in the field of marital family therapy, there is the American Association of Marital and Family Therapists website. There's a division for just California, the California Association of Marital and Family Therapists. Those are 2 great organizations that can give you a lot more information about the field of marital and family therapy. But I'd say just do a Google search, careers in psychology, and see what kind of different things come up. But I think it's the people can tell you the most who are working in different fields. And to learn that there is a difference between a therapist, which I am, versus a clinical psychologist. They primarily provide testing. They may do some therapy, but they do provide testing, which I do not. And then a psychiatrist. That is a whole different career. It does involve psychology, but it does involve 4 years of medical school, and you are a medical doctor, and you can prescribe medications to your clients as you are assessing and diagnosing them. So lots of different fields that you could go into after you initially study psychology, many different areas. Again, the direction I took is pursuing a master's in marital and family therapy to be a therapist, and eventually I got my doctorate.